Good evening and welcome to a big look, I guess, the very broken word of, excuse me, Google Analytics and Facebook advertising. My name is Dante St. James. Please excuse the bright and beautiful shirt on this lovely, lovely sunny evening as I go into the evening here in Darwin. Post-lockdown, hopefully you're staying safe where you are too, and there's no lockdowns going on, or at least if there are, you're able to move around and just wear those masks and play it safe. Let's get underway. I'll share the screen and I'll take you on a little bit of a walk through why these things are broken and what you can do about them. And thankfully, there are plenty of things you can do about them. First of all, a quote from one of my favorite corporate and personal development books of all time, Who Moved My Cheese by Dr. Spencer Johnson. The quicker you let go of old cheese, the sooner you find new cheese. We've got some people in marketing land who are terrified of the fact that they no longer have as much visibility as they used to have when it came to their Google ads and a lot of the tools they were using, such as Facebook ads and stuff. They just don't have the visibility they used to have. Now it's a new world. They have to find where that cheese has moved to. When they were a mouse going through the maze and they knew where the cheese was, life was good, times were good, but things have changed. So where's the cheese gone? We'll look at a little bit of that in just a moment. What we're going to cover today is why analytics and insights are broken. We'll look at some case studies as well of how that has played out, what you can then do about that, why retargeting and remarketing, and I'll explain what they are really soon, are broken, as well as some case studies and what we can do about those things as well. This is brought to you by Business Station and the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program, brought to you by the Australian Government and brought to you in certain parts of Australia by Business Station in WA, Regional Development Australia Brisbane in Queensland, and Treaty Business Consulting in the Northern Territory. This is also available a little bit later on YouTube. You can watch it on YouTube through either my channel, Dante St. James, or through the Business Station channel as well. I'd love to see you there. And if you are watching this right now on YouTube, I'd love a subscription to whatever channel you're watching this on, just so you can get more of these through. And don't forget to hit the little bell icon so you can be notified when new material comes through as well. A little bit about me. I'm educated through many different places, but I'll just give the most relevant stuff. The University of New South Wales, Sydney, for Bachelor of Marketing and Business Information Centres Systems. And then finally, after that, a Master's in Business Information Systems as well. Through the Chartered Institute of Marketing, I've done all their levels of up to postgraduate certificates as well. And I'd like to keep things going in touch with a TAFE qualification or two every year, depending on what it is and what things I need to know. The most recent one was a cybersecurity statement of attainment as well. I work with Facebook through their business blueprint program, both globally and Australia through Facebook Australia New Zealand, as a lead trainer for both the global program and the Australian New Zealand Boost with Facebook program, which hopefully in a few weeks I'll be heading to the Barossa Valley in South Australia to deliver some training to a whole bunch of businesses in that region of Australia. And then also a digital marketing associate and media planning professional with Facebook Blueprint. I work with lots of other programs. I won't go into those too heavily because we want to know, why is analytics so broken? What happened to break it? What's so different with this tool that everybody has come to learn to trust over such a long period of time now? And just let me know too, I've got some weird screen things going on at the moment. So if you cannot see my screen at the moment and all you can see is my big mug or a big black screen, please tell me in the chat window, because it is open for those of you who have joined me this afternoon on the Zoom webinar. So just put it into your chat window, into the Q&A, and let me know if you can't see those. Well, the problem is when it comes to analytics, numbers never really ever were just numbers. Google Analytics can't detect all your visitors. It actually can't. It definitely can't. It also won't detect all your visitors. It's not designed to detect every single person that comes through. And there's a few reasons for that. And Google also do a thing where they massage the numbers. The numbers that you think are coming through are not necessarily the numbers you think they are going to be. So let's break that down a little bit. Google can't detect all your visitors because some browsers have blocked third-party tracking in the browser. Now, third-party tracking is something I'll explain a bit more clearly very soon. Also, if you're behind some sort of corporate networks, quite often the corporate network won't allow tracking to come through from the firewall that's set up between you and the rest of the internet and say your computer. So usually tracking happens based on your computer. A lot of corporate networks will block that from happening. And then we've probably all heard of the Great Firewall of China. So some national networks block this kind of tracking as well. So they believe that it's not right for their citizens of their nation to be tracked in such these ways. That's the thing that digital advertising has opened up a world of opportunities for us to deliver much more appropriate advertising to people according to their interests, their behaviors, and the things that they love. But most recent moves have kind of shut that down a little bit, and it's now becoming harder and harder to reach the people you'd like to through Facebook ads and Google ads as well. So the reason why you may find that Google and Facebook and other networks and that can't detect your visitors because they just choose not to. They know that there's a certain amount of your visits are not people. They are bots, automated traffic. Google has its own bot that goes around. A lot of different indexing sites from Google to Yahoo to Microsoft's Bing, they all have little spiders that crawl around the World Wide Web and they go and look for new stuff and they ingest that in and they track it through. Sometimes your website will get those visitors as well. In fact, every day you'll get these visitors. So it's important for Google and their analytics tool to be able to sort out what is a known bot and what is an actual person, because they're very, very different and behave in very, very different ways. Now, your own clicks, when you're working, say, on the front or the back end of your site, you don't necessarily want to class those as traffic because, well, they're not legitimate customers. They're not legitimate people who are looking to buy something from you or to book your services. They're you working on the site. So if you're working on the site on 3, 4, 5 different pages a day, every day for a year, that adds up to a lot of extra traffic that's just rubbish traffic. It's not real traffic that you can make any sort of decisions based on. And we can also look at any traffic that seems, according to Google, as suspicious. It's just doing, it's coming in. Google has a very good way of measuring the intention of some traffic coming into your site. They can kind of tell where a lot of this traffic's been before, how quickly it moves from site to site or from page to page, and the patterns that it follows. Now, some of these bots are very, very smart and do things that sort of equate to what a human would do in your website, but most of them are pretty stupid and they just quickly just go on the sites and go and pop, 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 super fast through there so they can deliver information back to their owner as soon as possible. What kind of information? Sometimes it's looking for vulnerabilities in the code of your website. Sometimes it could just be indexing your site to put somewhere. Either which way, Google can tell pretty much what those are and knows not to count those. So not all traffic is equal. Not all traffic is going to be measured because Google doesn't want to measure it. It wants to reject it because it's not good quality traffic. And then finally, Google then massages the numbers by removing the known sources of rubbish. They use algorithmic corrections based upon raw information that's coming in. They've got these what they call machine learning or AI that goes through and scrubs through those results and goes, look, this is definitely not real. This is not right here either. This is a behavior that doesn't seem like a human. And they move all that aside and so you get a massage version of those raw numbers. But there's also what you can tell it to disregard. You can set certain IP addresses, for instance, or certain sources of people's traffic to disregard whatever's coming from there as not traffic. So let's just say, for instance, we say that everybody in our office, on any computer in our office, on any mobile phone of an employee of our office who accesses our website should not be counted as a visitor because that would be, first of all, dishonest, but secondly, it's not useful for us to learn more about the kind of people that we're working with. It's more useful for, I suppose, artificially pumping up numbers, but when all those numbers are coming from your office, those numbers are fairly easy to see through by anyone who really knows what they're looking for. So why is this so important? Why does this all happen? Why is this an issue? Well, we'll start off in 1995 when a product called Urchin was built. Now, I remember Urchin. It was like a web statistics tool that was built into web hosting platforms. So if I got a web host, let's just say back then it might have been all things internet. They were based out of Sydney, ATI Net. I remember them well. And that was my first web host that I used. And they used the Urchin web statistics tool built into the web server that helped me to be able to count how many hits or visits that I got on the internet. Now, because we knew that we couldn't really tell where the information was coming from, we weren't sophisticated yet enough to know that we'd, that thing was called a UTM. So there were, a UTM is a set of codes on the end of any sort of web address that can help you to tell where it came from. So if someone found you from an ad in the yellow pages, you would have a universal text marker on the end that would tell you more about what that particular traffic was coming from. So the yellow pages might go, mybusiness.com.au / UTM equals source equals yellow pages. And even though the customer or who's looking at your site may not notice that, it would then be measured in your Urchin stats and show you, oh, that one came from the yellow pages. The difference was this is what we call first party tracking, because it was stored only on your web server. So the whole of all this was not on any sort of other website out there in the cloud. The cloud hadn't been invented yet. It was all measured on your own web server. And because it was on your web server and in your website, it was regarded as what's called first party tracking. And first party tracking is not affected by today's sudden privacy rushes with governments trying to block this and block that, and Apple trying to block this and block that. Now that changed a bit in 2005 when Google bought Urchin and renamed it Google Analytics. And Google Analytics became a thing that wasn't stored on your own website anymore or on your own web server. It was moved across to what their cloud service was. This is the beginning of network computing, and they call this, it wasn't really called cloud by then. That didn't really come across to the 2010s. But when it did go across to Google, it was then able to measure more things such as the referrer, like who it come from, where that traffic come from, what was the source of it. We saw visitors rather than just visits. We could track a bit more about people themselves and know that this is someone who perhaps has certain behaviors. Now, by now, Google were getting very known for their search engine tool, which was pretty much like so many light years ahead of anything that came before it that it kind of wiped the floor with everything that came before it. I remember using Yahoo all the time as my default search engine. And then suddenly this thing called Google was as Yahoo powered by Google. I'd never heard of Google. And then I went across to Google and looked at it and went, such a clean website, no rubbish around it. Just like put my stuff in and I get my answers back. It was great. So fast forward to 2012 when Google introduced the first really big, huge update to Google Analytics called Universal Analytics. Now, this is Google Analytics as you and I probably know it as today. It had room for interpretation of what the data was. You could design custom reports that display custom information for you. It would measure things like return on investment. So you could say, if someone comes from this particular Google ad into this particular part of my website, that's worth $35 to me, even if they don't buy it, because it's $35 worth of whatever. We can make estimates, and we had multiple locations. And the idea was here that was a universal code that could go across all parts of your websites or different devices. You could have that same code on an app. You could have that same code on 3 different websites if you really wanted to, if you wanted to bring all your measurements of all your online stuff together in one place. So it was a very smart tool and a very clever tool, but it was still part of this third-party tracking tools. It was needing to be sent off to a cloud service. So it wasn't like you were processing this information yourself on your own website. All you have was a little bit of code that was installed at the top of your website on every page that then would send off that information to Google for them to work out what it actually meant. And that's where you got the massaging of the numbers and a little bit more information about, what the context was of what people were doing as they were visiting your site. And this is when Google started to get really smart at being understanding the context of people's search and the context of then how they behaved on your website. They got an idea of what a human was as opposed to what a bot was. There was certain sets of behaviors moving through your website that were telltale signs that this visitor is an actual human. Now we come to 2020, and the first update in 8 years to Google Analytics is in the form of a thing called Google Analytics 4. It's all based around machine learning and AI. It's based around learning what the patterns are of people visiting your site. And I hate to say it, but the numbers are all estimates. So your numbers are now not based upon raw data. They're based upon estimates that are based upon prior behaviors, based upon what Google understands about the context and the intention that people have when they visit your website. And it's also based upon some of the first party data it can get, or third party data that's still allowed to get through. And I say still allowed to get through because I guess it's very much about the idea that third party tracking is broken. It's about to be completely obliterated in the next 6 to 9 months, and by and large is already kind of useless to us. And third party tracking works in such a way that someone's sitting in a computer or on a phone and they visit a website. So then that website has code that gets triggered to send off information to a cloud service. That cloud service could be Google Analytics, it could be Google Ads, it could be Facebook ad platform, Pinterest, or LinkedIn's ad platforms as well. They all use the same kind of thing. It's when there's code from a third-party product sitting on your website that's then designed to send that information of anyone who lands on that page or anywhere on your website, sends information about that visitor back to the cloud, back to the mothership of all data. So it makes sense that that's how it works. I don't think that's really a hard thing to understand about how it works. But what is hard to understand is what's so broken about how it works. What is the problem here? Well, the problem is that these three guys have gone and sort of caused a bit of a mess, and probably started more with Firefox as a browser. They decided to create a more private browser. That's the one on the right, the pretty one that's sort of circling a white orb. Then on the left, you had Microsoft's Edge browser, which is their attempt to take on Google's Chrome browser. It's very much the same thing. You can log in with a Google Chrome account even and have all your preferences come across, but it is defaulted to be a lot more private. And then the big boogeyman is the one in the middle, and that's Apple. I'll show you how this all works. The Microsoft Edge browser has now defaulted to block third-party tracking. So that whole thing where you visit a website and then the website communicates back to Google and Facebook and Pinterest and LinkedIn about all the things that are going on in your world on your website, that has now defaulted to blocking. So if someone uses Edge and they sign up for it originally, they put it in place, it now defaults to block that third-party tracking. You can turn that off as a preference, but it will still warn you that of that tracking while you're browsing. Every so often it'll bring up and say, do you know this is still doing this? And you'll go, oh, that's creepy, block. The whole point of Microsoft Edge and these other browsers that are doing this is to be promoting themselves as being privacy first, as opposed to these big tech behemoths like Google and Facebook who are only interested in gobbling up all your data to I guess to make money and sell ads that are going to come and make you try and buy something from wish.com. They are promoting that they can block all that out so that there's none of that creepiness of for instance, where you feel like you were talking about Hawaiian pizza to a friend in a restaurant one day, and all of a sudden you get home, you're getting ads for Hawaiian shirts and Hawaiian pizza and Hawaiian this and Hawaiian that. And you think that's creepy because your phone's listening to you and it's reporting it back to Facebook. It's definitely not the case. It all comes down to humans being pretty predictable and not really as clever as we think we are. We think we're very individual when we're not really that individual. As a herd, we move very much the way the herd moves through the savannah or the safari in Africa. When all the zebra turn one way, then all of them turn that way. It's not just one that does. Or watching birds flock together, the birds will turn one way, suddenly one of them turns right and the rest turn right and follow that one as well. A similar thing happens with the Firefox browser. They're really the first to do it. It defaults also to block third-party tracking. So those little Google codes, those little Facebook pixel codes now can't trigger. And it then warns if you're still browsing and you'll still decide you don't want to be blocking third-party traffic, it warns you as you're going along of sites that will be doing that to you. And again, their big thing is promoting themselves as a privacy first browser, an alternative to the big tech companies that are, pillaging your data and pillaging all that information about you to sell you more stuff. Funnily though, a lot of the money and the research funding that comes to Firefox is actually from Google. Google are their biggest corporate donor and pretty much keeps Firefox and Mozilla, the Mozilla organization, afloat. Otherwise, they wouldn't have anything to do. Now, the big bad guy is that iOS 14.6, the most recent version of the iPhone system to be installed, brought some really nice features, helped clean up the phone. I've got an iPhone. I've got two iPhones actually, but two of them, they work nicer, they work better. It's a great system. I'm really enjoying it. One thing I did notice though is that when I opened up Facebook after installing it, it prompted me and said, well, this app is going to be tracking you through the internet. Do you want to allow this? And I was like, I don't care. Yes, do it. That's fine. The problem is the default answer. So usually when you these things will do that in a way that says, to keep you going with the tracking is the first thing you'll do, not the second thing. What they've done is put the first option is to turn off tracking, and the language is done in such a way that it makes the tracking sound really evil and makes the turning off of that tracking not so evil. It actually now prompts you. So if you've selected yes, that you want to be tracked like I have, it's still going to pop up every so often and remind you that you are being tracked. So you go, well, I'm being tracked. Does that sound, if someone was not really knowing what being tracked means, they would think, oh, what, the government's following me? Oh, they're tracing everything I'm doing. Oh no, 5G, COVID-19, government conspiracy. Like, it's really designed to appeal to that kind of person. That said though, 95% of all the responses to that prompt that have come up on Apple phones have been to yes, block it. Actually block that tracking. So they've selected the default as Apple wanted them to, and now they've gone, okay, I'm not going to be tracked on Facebook. I'm not going to be tracked on Google searches. I'm not going to be tracked as I go around all these different websites. And they will not prompt you again. If you've selected to block that tracking, they're not going to prompt you again to undo that if you find that your experience on the internet is no longer as personalized. And that's the difference, is advertising has become very personalized now, to the point where it knows what I want, and the ads that I get are appropriate for the kind of person I am. I go to Facebook and I see a lot of things for software and tools and all that sort of thing, online courses, and these are all things I have a really big interest in. But now, if I was the person who said, no, don't track me, my ads are going to come out a little bit less relevant, I guess, and less appropriate to who I am. But I selected, yes, please track me. So I'm still getting the kind of ads I want to get. But the problem is that that's going to change dramatically. Now, whilst Google Chrome on the desktop is by far and away the dominant web browser, followed by Apple Safari at a very low rate, because Apple Safari, while it is available on desktops, is primarily the browser on iPhones. You got Microsoft Edge, Firefox, Internet Explorer. There's still some holdouts with that old thing. I've got locks there on the ones that will actively block third-party tracking, now that we know what that is. So Apple, Microsoft Edge, and Firefox, the number 2, 3, and 4 desktop browsers, will all automatically by default block that third-party tracking. But when we move to the very different picture on the browser, on the mobile, this tells you how many iPhones are currently in use in Australia. We have one of the highest penetrations, if not the highest penetration, of iPhone users amongst all mobile phone users in the country. Apple's Safari browser is the most used web browser on a mobile phone. Not on Apple mobile phones, on all mobile phones. Now consider this. Apple's Safari browser is not available on Android, on any Android phone. It's only available on iPhones and iPads, and Chrome as well, on a Mac. And I think you can also get it from, you used to be able to get it for Windows. We're not sure they do that anymore. But then Google Chrome is the next one after that. And this roughly sort of looks at the split between iPhone users and Android users. Now, the funny thing is, though, that There are more Android phones out there, not that much more. In fact, in some more recent numbers, we're starting to see that the iPhone is a slightly higher penetration than what even Android has in Australia. There's just a lot of Android devices laying around not being used. There's been a lot of them bought, but they just get thrown away and not really used. So Apple's Safari browser is the most used web browser in the country. This is just in Australia, right? And it's the secure one. Firefox and Opera really don't rate that much. Not many people are using those at all on their mobile phones, but Apple Safari users are largely using Apple Safari browser. Now, I also use Chrome on my iPhones because I find it has access to all the things I want and need, and it's a familiar interface that just works for me. What we've seen now is that 36% of desktop browsing cannot be tracked anymore. We just can't see what they're doing. We can't see who they are. They've opted out of any kind of tracking. We just can't see them. But 60% of mobile browsing can't be tracked. That is a phenomenal number. That is meaning the majority of mobile traffic on the web cannot be tracked through Google, Facebook, or any other third-party tracking tools. And this is where it gets really, really broken. We're essentially starting to see some cases where some websites are showing measurable traffic that's between 30 and 85% less than they had before. That's a big drop in traffic. Or is it? We don't necessarily know whether the traffic really has dropped that much. We just know that what we're seeing in Google Analytics is telling us that the traffic has dropped that much. Huh. Well, ultimately, so what? It's not like I'm selling ads on my website and then I want to, make sure that the people who know that I've got all this traffic, and I can accurately say, yes, I've got all this traffic. So you buy ads on my pages because people are going to see that because I've got millions coming through. Well, that might be the case. If you did have that kind of dependency and you're making money through that, you will have reduced visibility of visitors. And what that means is you're going to have lower AdSense revenue. So if you're running a website that has AdSense ads running on it, for you and I, probably not that much. For things like news.com.au, the Sydney Morning Herald, and other online publishing tools, online newspapers, that lower AdSense revenue is actually going to ravage what they've already got. Now, considering that this whole privacy push was one of those things was pushed by the newspaper owners, was pushed by the the Yellow Pages people and the local search people, this is actually going to come back to bite them because it's actually going to bite their revenue. It's actually going to take away from their revenue, not open them up for more revenues, which is a completely dumb thing. It's also going to show that you'll have less effective retargeting campaigns through Google Ads, and we'll have a closer look at the Google Ads thing shortly. But it's also going to cause you lots of problems with other tools. Suddenly, the information you're getting in Google Analytics isn't that reliable. If we're losing 60% of mobile traffic from being visible in Google Analytics, you can guarantee that those figures are not going to be great. They're not going to make sense. They're not going to be accurate. Then if we look at that reduced visibility of visitors for other things, such as Facebook, it means lower ad retargeting results on Facebook. Once before we use ad retargeting, and I'll again have a bit of a look at this soon, as a very, very big part of our online digital marketing efforts, then that's suddenly becoming very, very reduced. Remembering 60% less data coming in from all over the internet. That's a lot. That also means we've got less visibility of where visitors come from, and that can very much affect the creative we're producing. If we don't know that 72% of our client base is actually in Indonesia, because we can't see that from their visits, we can only see it when they add things to cart and actually put their shipping information in, then we don't know that we could be actually producing some ads that are written in Bahasa, which is the language of Indonesia, rather than pushing through ads in English. Or we could be, trying to get some, not knowing that 22% of people who are buying from your online store are from New Zealand, but we're producing lots of Aussie ads to them because we do not know that there's people in New Zealand who are actually buying from us until they actually complete the purchase. And we go, oh, wow, okay. Maybe we would have got a lot more people if we didn't have photos of kangaroos all over it while it was going to Christchurch. And you'll get less accurate insights in other online ad platforms like LinkedIn, Pinterest, and Twitter. And there's a lot of other, any platform that has, TikTok even has it, any platform that has code that's installed into websites or apps or anything like that, that's used to help you to more accurately measure your results of your ads, then that's all going to be broken. In fact, it already is broken. But it will get even more broken because in 2022, the big kahuna of online browsing, Google's Chrome, is going to do the same thing. It is going to default to not tracking third-party data, which has meant that Google have now started to move towards a world that's post third-party tracking. And that was what we talked about before, Google Analytics 4. Now, whilst it's still not there and it's very much experimental, it's something which I suppose is still something that people are using because it's Google Analytics. We've been taught to trust Google Analytics. So what does this look like in the real world? What effects does this have on other people? In my own ClickStarter website, one of my businesses, I have 3 very different numbers appearing for the last 30 days of website traffic. In my internal tracking via the Jetpack plugin, which is part of WordPress, I'm tracking at 3,734 visitors on my website. Pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with that over 30 days. That makes sense to me. Yet, if I pop over to Google Analytics, the current Google Analytics, the UA Analytics, now usually Google Analytics is very conservative, but they're tracking me at 6,556 visitors. That's a lot of visitors. What is going on there? That Google Analytics 4, also in my website, is measuring that I have 1,800 visitors over that month. 3 different tracking tools, 1 website, 3 very different responses, massively different responses, not even close. In fact, the internal tracking via Jetpack and Google Analytics 4, both of those fail to pick up that Google Analytics Universal Analytics, that's what UA stands for. That's the current one. That gray one's the current Google Analytics we're all using. Google Analytics 4 is the future one that people who are early adopters like me have installed. So Google's Analytics Universal Analytics is actually picking up a huge amount of people coming to my website from Indonesia, particularly from the island of Java. So from cities like Surabaya, Yogyakarta, Jakarta, Semarang, all different big cities. So why are the other tools not picking that up? Google Analytics 4 barely shows anyone coming from it. It does show a significant amount of people coming from Singapore, as does the internal tracking via Jetpack. They're all picking up a significant number of people in Singapore, but only one of them's picking up this massive glut of traffic coming out of Indonesia. In another case, a client of mine, Positive Canine Behavior, a dog obedience training school, their internal tracking via Jetpack was picking up 660 people, Analytics UA, 1,778, and Google Analytics 4, just 48 visitors. It all makes you wonder, what numbers can I actually believe? What can I take from this? Does this mean anything? What is the meaning? And how do I work with this? What do I actually do in the real world with it? And we asked that. What can you actually do about this? If visitor numbers are important to you, if that's something you have to report to someone, say to a boss or a marketing agency or to a marketing director, or to, if you're using, for instance, maybe Google's AdSense, so that when you get paid for the ads that you serve on your site, that's very much highly dependent upon the amount of people coming through your site. Well, then you may use the Google Universal Analytics numbers, the current Google Analytics. This is probably the one that we've all kind of agreed to. As an industry, we've all agreed to over the last 20 years that Google Analytics is the metric of choice for everyone because we all use it. Now, whether it's accurate, whether it's massage numbers, whether it's complete and utter BS, we've at least agreed that we're all going to follow the same complete and utter BS. And so Even though the numbers may not be accurate, at least the comparisons between us all will be accurate because we're all being measured by the same scale. I would say, then consider the Google Analytics 4 is your experimental test. You run that on your website the same way you run your regular Google Analytics. But instead of relying upon its numbers to base anything, just put Google Analytics 4 in as an experiment. You can run them both side by side. You can actually have both of them side by side in Analytics and on your website. So if you've got them side by side, Analytics 4 is your experiment. You're putting it in there so that Google has time and resources to be able to test and learn more about your website's visitors over time. And then I would use your website numbers that are through, say, if you're at Wix, you'll have there's certain Wix analytics that work. If you're using Doodah or you're using Squarespace, they've got their own built-in analytics tools, as does WordPress with a thing called Jetpack. You can install Jetpack on your site and it uses what we call first-party analytics and tracking. So you can see who's been to your site. You can't really tell that much about them, but you know that they are people. You know that they are visitors, right? So have those backup numbers as well. Because if someone's going to ask, in my case, my best numbers are coming out of Google's UA. I'm expecting that to deteriorate over this year to the point where the backup numbers that are showing in my website will be the higher number. It'll be not quite as accurate because it's not quite as good at measuring what fake traffic is, but it will be the better number and probably the number I want to use more, particularly if I do choose to take on ads on my website. If ad retargeting is important to you, so rather than just high numbers of people visiting you, if what you want to do is get them to visit you so you can then reserve them another lot of ads when they go to other websites, well, then install Facebook's conversions API in your hosting. Now, this is different than the Facebook Pixel. This is different than just verifying your domain, which you might have done recently through the Facebook Ads Manager. This is about installing a particular set of code in your web server, not your website, but your web server. And what this allows us to do is to much more closely manage and track from a first-party basis what's going into your website. Now, it does report that back to Facebook, but it does it through a very secure method, and it does it through a very anonymized method, unlike the version that goes back now, which is not really that anonymized and has a lot of information attached to it. This new version will allow you to continue to do things like retargeting or remarketing on Facebook ads. But again, it's not 100% accurate. It's still not 100%. It's better than nothing, but it's certainly not as accurate as being able to just see what the traffic is as it's coming into your website. I would say that if ad retargeting is important to you as well, it might be time for you to stop relying so heavily on retargeting things that are happening on your website and retargeting your ads based upon what people are doing on Facebook and Instagram, on Google, on the World Wide Web. And then also maybe build a strategy that just doesn't rely so heavily on retargeting and remarketing. And I've got a bit more of that to come as well. So why retargeting and remarketing are broken essentially is because in the case of Google Ads remarketing, you've got a situation where the average person goes to visit a website. At that website, a Google campaign tag is triggered. So the owner of the website is putting this code, this Google campaign, Google tag, and what happens is you delivered an ad from that website elsewhere on the internet. So to put that in probably a bit more of a personal thing, this is what I did today. I visited the Skechers footwear because they've got a massive sale on and their footwear is very, very cheap at the moment. And I feel like I need to buy all the shoes. I've never been so in love with shoes before until I found this sale. So I visited this website today. And of course, a Google campaign tag was triggered. So it said, oh, here's this guy. He is on this website. So he's going off and he hasn't really bought anything on this website, just visited. So what we're going to do is deliver him a whole bunch of ads. So this is today, Monday, July the 5th, that I actually visited the news.com.au. And at the very top, what did I get? A great big banner full of Skechers. So this is a perfect example of someone like me who is tracked. And who is elected to continue to be tracked, getting the kind of ads that make sense to me. In fact, two of those pairs of shoes I actually own. This one over here and this one over here. I actually own those 2 pairs of shoes. So I guess I guess I probably should really buy the other 2, right? Probably not. I've got enough shoes as it is. But when you deliver those ads for the website, it's all based upon the fact that I visited their website earlier. And this will hang around for about maybe a week and a half before it starts to fade away. And I'm delivered ads from other things. Now I've done a lot of actions. I've bought shoes on that website. I browse shoes. I put them on the wish list. I'm a prime target for them to be targeting through ads like these. I'm the best person they could possibly be going for because I've got some level of disposable income, and I like to buy Skechers shoes because they're comfortable, especially for old people like me. In the case of Facebook ad retargeting, it's a little bit different. The process goes a bit like this. You click on an ad on Facebook. It then takes you through to a website where the Facebook pixel is triggered. So it says, oh yeah, this person, I know who they are. They're a person from Facebook. So when I go back to Facebook and Insta, I'm delivered an ad like this. And this is exactly an ad that I was delivered, this top trending styles ad for Skechers sneakers in Australia. And this ad's running in Australia. In fact, I saw it. That's how I screenshot it. It was the first ad that came up on my feed after I'd been to the Skechers website. Now, that's very effective for Skechers and for anyone who's really doing this kind of ad retargeting, because people are already thinking of you. So the chances are that if you can deliver something to them in terms of, I don't know, an easy way to shop, showing that these styles are trending, or perhaps there's a discount code in there, it's a great way to get someone to pop back to your website and complete that purchase if they were maybe added to cart and then abandoned it, didn't actually go through with the sale. The problem now, though, of course, is that when it comes to Google, you visit a website and the Google campaign tag is not triggered. You never see that remarketed ad. In both times, that action is blocked. You visit the website, sure, that's all good and fine. But because you've elected not to be tracked, the website can no longer see who you are or what you've got to do with anything. And a little cookie is not delivered into your system to say, hey there, this person, when they visit these other sites where our ads are, make sure you deliver them something based upon what they've gone and seen, and they visit this website, which is maybe the Skechers website. So in that case, it'd be broken too on Facebook, because you click on an ad on Facebook, it takes you a website, but the Facebook trigger is never triggered. The Facebook pixel never gets hit. It doesn't know you're there. So therefore, Facebook doesn't know that you should be delivered this ad on Facebook or Instagram later on. It's fascinating, isn't it? It's one of those things where you go, I never really understood that so much of this stuff was going on behind the scenes. And that's why ads are so much more personal and quietly so much more effective than on TV or radio or press or print or bus sides or bus shelters or billboards. It's so much more effective because it's already delivering you the things that you're already interested in. So what do we do about that? Well, remarketing and retargeting, I have to admit, have made us very lazy marketers. And I'm one of those lazy marketers myself. The problem is that when we managed to get good results out of Google, we did it by treating a website visit as a green light to harass people. So we go, okay, because they went to my website, send them endless ads for the next 2 weeks until they get so sick of us, they want to block us, or they just stop liking what we do altogether. Or we manage to get good results out of Google ads, and then we place banner ads on any old website so that when people visit our website, the Skechers site, I get a terrible impression about the Skechers on the way they delivered that ad to the top of news.com.au. Now, sure, it was effective in that I knew they were Skechers, but I can't get rid of that ad. It won't move. It takes up, a third of my big honking 32-inch screen with that horrible looking ad. So is that helpful to me? Or is that actually hindering me from actually doing the things I want to do? And then there's very poor creative that's delivered as what we call website takeovers. And I call that ad that we saw before a website takeover because it's taken over the whole top of the website. And I'm not likely to buy any shoes because I've already bought the bloody shoes. I'm not going to buy any more shoes. So we've really got lazy. We just treated any old visit to a website as a permission to just harass the crap out of people to get them to buy something, placing banner ads on any old website they may happen to visit afterwards. with no context about whether that's shopping or whatever. Like, I'm not going to news.com.au to further look at shoes that I might have looked at on a site earlier today. I'm there to find out news about COVID-19, right? And that poor creative, that this block of 4 shoes, just really poorly taken, really put together, was the main experience I had. So it made a bad experience of news.com.au, but also made me feel a little bit, a little bit crabby at Skechers. I like your shoes, guys, but your ads, they've got to stop. When it comes to Facebook, to Google, instead what we can do is understand what visits are matching what intentions. If someone is visiting our website for the first time, harassing them to buy something straight away by delivering them endless ads as they surf around the news websites of Australia, it's probably not helping them to be nurtured into a relationship with you. But if someone's visited your website twice in the last week, there's something going on there. So if we understand what the intentions are of people, rather than just assuming that a website visit is an open invitation to hunt them down, we might actually get a bigger hit rate and sell a bit more on our websites. Having good creative that matches the intention of the person visiting and the product they were looking at. So for instance, I've bought enough black shoes now from Skechers. I don't need to see more photos of black shoes, but that's what they deliver me. More photos of black shoes. I got 2 pairs of gray shoes from them. I don't need more gray shoes. If they were smart, they'd go, he's already bought lots of black shoes and red and gray shoes. Let's deliver him some pictures of some colored shoes to see if that's a good upsell for him. Now that would have been clever. If I was sending, say, red shoes in there, I'd go, maybe I'll look at that. But because they delivered me essentially what I already had, they did not match my intention, and they did not match a product that I may actually go and consider. They just assumed because I bought black shoes that I wanted more black shoes. Adding value to people rather than just discount codes, you're probably going to get my attention more by saying, get a free pair of socks with every pair of shoes, rather than a 10% discount on a $120 pair of shoes, which is like $12. It's nothing. Add in a pair of socks, it may only be worth $2-3. You're probably going to get a bargain. I would see that as a bargain. I get not only the shoes, but the socks as well. Consider adding value to someone's shopping experience or their service experience, rather than just throwing discounts at them. After all, now that I know that Skechers will discount their shoes down so much to the point where I can pay $40 for a $160 pair of shoes at the right time of year, I'm guaranteed that now they've trained me to look out for that sale. I'm not going to buy those shoes unless I get them at that price. They've now devalued the product. I will never pay $160 for a pair of shoes again. Crazy, huh? In Facebook, though, we managed to get good results out of really poorly made ad creative, really just ugly ads that we just whack together in some sort of Canva template that everyone else uses. And it's just awful. But because we put it out to a very broad audience that wasn't very targeted well at all we wanted to do was make sure we got it out to 1 million people. So if maybe 100 people clicked on it, they might buy our stuff. And we put them into sales funnels that badgered people after the click. We said, you've clicked on this, therefore you've gone to our website. Let's harass you all across Facebook and all across the rest of the web until you decide to buy that pair of shoes. And I don't know about you, but I don't like walking into any store and being badgered by people to say, hey, come and try this on. Oh, wow, you look great in this. Like, shut up and leave me alone. I will find what I like, and then I'll find you if I need to talk to you. That's not the way shopping works. And it's not the way that our sales funnels work. They assume because we happen to walk in that door that it's open season to harass us into buying something. So instead of that, on Facebook and Insta, we can do something a little bit more effective, such as really understanding the customer, understanding what their real interests are, understanding how our products and services fit into their lives. You can do this through something like a story brand consultation, which you can do as a one-to-one through the ASBAS Digital Solutions program with me. Or if you want to do it yourself, I've got a webinar on YouTube all about it. It's about understanding what the problem is your customer wants to solve. And you go, well, they're not really solving a problem. They want to do this wonderful thing. Great. But there's still the essence of it, trying to solve a problem. Someone who wants to book a holiday, their problem isn't that they want to book a holiday. The problem is that they're so busy and so exhausted, they need to get away and they want someone to make it easy for them. Instead of retargeting actions on websites, such as people visiting or people clicking on certain things or adding to cart, things that we're now no longer able to track very much at all. How about retargeting people's actions on the platforms themselves? What are they already doing on Facebook and Instagram that's trackable? And those things could be liking a post, liking a story, watching a video, clicking on any comments to add their own, clicking on an ad or on a piece of cred to open it up, watching 10% or 10 seconds of video, watching 3 seconds of a video. How about watching 75% of a video? If someone watched 75% of my 1 minute video, that equates to 45 seconds. Someone's bothering to watch 45 seconds of my 1 minute video. They have an interest in what I'm doing, far more than me getting some interest about someone who clicked on a website link that I can't see anymore. If they're interested enough to watch that video for 45 seconds out of a minute, even if it's 15 seconds out of that minute, that's showing a pretty strong interest and intent. So how about I send them something which is really going to, wet their lips for what I can do, rather than saying, here, go to my shop and get 10% off with this discount code, Dante yo. We want something a bit more meaty than that. We want something a little bit more attractive than that. If you really understand them, if you know that they're really interested, 45 seconds of watching a video, there's something on that video they really liked. So take that and retarget that, rather than having to retarget someone who just happened to visit our website randomly. And also understand that click is an invitation to harass. The giving of an email address is not a tool to harass with. Sending out a daily email, constantly trying to convert someone to buy with manipulative, emotionally laden language is like, oh, I'm so sorry that you didn't buy this. I feel really bad. I'd really like to know what it is you're doing. We've all received those emails, and they just go in through one eye and they're out through the back of our brain, because we just realize it's rubbish and it's all written by a robot. It's not even a person. So as we draw to a conclusion, I'd like to invite you, if you're already part of the ASBAS Digital Solutions program, to book me if you'd like to talk more about these things. You can get me at the moment for, well, if you've never had an ASBAS Digital Solutions one-to-one, it's free, $44 for your second and $66 for your third, or any after that. It is wrapping up at the end of July, so I would say hurry up and do it. I've got something like 72 bookings this month. I'm pretty much at capacity now, but I did open up some weekend slots just to help out as we reach the end of this particular program. But I do invite you to follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. If you're watching on YouTube, please bless me with a subscribe. I'd love to be able to get more of this material through to you as well. Thank you again for taking some time out of your business to, I guess, learn more about how to run your business. And I'll hopefully see you in the next one.